Hi there, welcome to the new temporary surroundings for my 10-minute moans in this beautiful Floridian boat hole that I've got for the next few days before returning home to Scotland. Probably tell me my voice and the lack of videos. I've been ill since I arrived here. I've only done one video since arriving in Florida, so I'll need to get cracking and try and make amends for that over the next few days. So, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And the topic of this 10-minute moan is a man who was stabbed to within an inch of his death by Islamic fundamentalists and is now been charged. We're talking now badly about Islamic fundamentalists. Seems like a strange story, but it's true. And this is back in Germany 6 months ago, the Mannheim, is that how you pronounce it? Mannheim attacks where a police officer was killed and some others were severely injured. And this has been covered by Spiked, stabbed by an Islamist, now silenced by the state. A victim of the Mannheim terror attack in Germany has now been convicted of anti-Islam hate speech. Earlier this year, activist and blogger Michael Stürzenberger became the victim of Islamic attack because of his harsh criticism of Islam. Now 6 months later, he has been convicted for incitement or hatred and given a fine by a regional court in Hamburg, also because of his harsh criticism of Islam. So in May, a former refugee from Afghanistan targeted and attacked Stürzenberger and 6 others during a rally organised by Stürzenberger's campaign group Pax Europa in Mannheim, southwest Germany. The incident left one police officer dead, Stürzenberger severely injured. He needed several operations on his face and knee, and the nation was in shock. Stürzenberger's incitement conviction is not directly related to the incidents in Mannheim. Instead, it relates to statements he made at a rally in Hamburg in 2020. He was originally found guilty of incitement for hatred and given a 6-month prison sentence in Hamburg court in September 2022, but appealed the conviction. Last month the court upheld the original verdict but reduced his sentence to a fine of €3,600. According to reports, his punishment was reduced because he had since become a victim of an assassination attempt. Another mitigating factor was that he had not given any public speeches since the Mannheim attack. The Stürzenberger case shows how dangerous, intimidating and anti-democratic Germany's laws against incitement to hatred and hate speech are. It would be difficult to find a country in Western Europe that restricts free speech as radically as Germany does, especially when it comes to criticising Islam. Indeed, the German elites regard criticism of Islam as an act of right-wing extremism that needs to be censored. This is why Stürzenberger, infamous for his anti-Islam stance, has been the subject of so much scrutiny from the authorities and the mainstream media. As far back as 2014, Der Spiegel published a feature on Stürzenberger and others criticising their anti-Islam rhetoric and asking whether it's time for a new kind of hate crime legislation. Wow, this was 10 years ago. There's little doubt that Stürzenberger can be offensive if he claims that his criticism only applies to political Islam, calling it a threat to democracy and an ideology that opposes women. But he has also compared parts of the Quran with Hitler's Mein Kampf. I've not read either of those books, so I couldn't comment. And while saying that not all Muslims are rapists, he talked of thousands of women who have been sexually assaulted by Muslims from northern Africa and Arabia. Still, such statements hardly warrant the harsh legal persecution that Stürzenberger has faced. It is difficult to escape the impression that he has been targeted by the German political and media elites because of their fear of far-right populism. That is, they fear his criticism of Islam will further fuel the rise of populist right. After all, Stürzenberger gives voice to many German scepticism and rejection of mass migration from the majority Muslim countries. But this is a thing that I struggle with. I don't believe that's a far-right viewpoint. People in Western Europe have had too many immigrants for years. Far more than we've ever had. So anybody to be concerned about the level of immigration doesn't necessarily mean you're far right or left or centre. You're just a concerned citizen. Indeed, over a decade ago, the then Mayor of Munich said how worried he was about Stürzenberger making his speeches against the background of rising support for right-wing alternative for Germany. He claimed that populists were trying to appeal to people through an anti-Islamic rhetoric. It seems German elites have responded by trying to clamp down on a criticism of Islam. Their determination to censor Islamic critics and therefore suppress this populist surge was reflected in the mainstream media's coverage of the Mannheim attacks. They largely refused to characterise Stürzenberger as any sort of victim. Wow, despite the severity of his injuries. One article in the left liberal TAS newspaper simply stated that Bavarian Michael Stürzenberger has been agitating against Islam for years and now has been seriously injured by a knife attacker. In other words, he brought it on himself. It's bonkers, isn't it? It's difficult to avoid the frightening conclusions that both Islamist terrorists and the German authorities share a similar objective. Both want to silence critics of Islam. It's just that where the Islamic terrorists would like to silence Stürzenberger through violence, authorities are attempting to do it through law. Both send out a chilling warning to anyone criticising Islam in Germany can get you in deep trouble. Yep, and that seems to be the way. So basically, if this man hadn't been stabbed almost to within an inch of his death, he'd have been went to jail for 6 months. They've only lowered the sentence to a fine because he was almost assassinated. And that's a bit scary. You could go to, well, it's not, this is what we're doing now. We're saying, you know, look at those other places. Britain's probably worse. You can go to jail for 2.5 years without criticising anybody. But this is the way the world is just now, where particularly countries controlled by left-leaning parties, they just have a fear of the right, and the right of centre, if you know, looking to curb immigration is a right of centre viewpoint, then they don't want that. They don't want to see a rise in anything right of centre. And we need some common sense. We need common sense and logic all over Europe. When you look at Poland and the amount of immigrants they've not taken over the last 20 years, and you compare their crime rates to the rest of Europe, it's pretty harrowing reading. Doesn't it take a Philadelphia lawyer to figure out what's going on there? So there you go, a bit of a strange story, horrific times over in Germany. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please hit the notifications, subscribe buttons. And let me know your comments, please, your opinions in the comments below. But, most important thing, unless you're the type of person that runs about wanting to stab people just because they've got concerns about Islam and the level of immigrations, not you, but
everyone else, have a great day. Cheerio, bye now.